All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I finished the PowerPoint presentations for Chapter 6 from our JavaScript 6th edition Web Warrior series by Vodnik and Gosselin. And so I finished the PowerPoints, but I really didn't go over any examples, so I thought I would do that in here. So I've gone out to W3 schools, and I've actually got 4 or 5 different sites here. All right. If a form field is empty, this function alerts a message and returns false to prevent the form from being submitted. Well, again, I'm not going to exactly run every one of these, but I do want to at least show some of them, and I'll run some of them as well. So if we look here, all right, var x equal documents my form f name, so it's looking for a first name. All right, so it's grabbing whatever is in the first name field, and it's saying if that value is empty, okay, name must be filled out. By returning false, you will have checks in your routine to make sure that the form is not attempted to be submitted. So if we look, I guess this is the example in here. It's got all of it in here. So if notice, if I leave the name blank and I click submit, name must be filled out. Oops. Okay. JavaScript rather can handle numeric input. So we're telling it here to enter a number between 1 and 10. Well, notice the numeric part is right here. That's saying if it's not numeric, or if it's less than 1, or if it's greater than 10, put input not valid, otherwise input OK. So if I put in 4, input OK. But if I put in 44, and I click submit, input not valid. If I leave it blank, input not valid. 6, input valid. Hello, input not valid. So hopefully looking at that, it makes some sense to you as far as what's going on in there. All right, so it's a combined check. If we only wanted to check, if we told you to enter a number, period. All right, so what we said in here was, where are we? Just input a number. Input any number. So input any number. Doesn't matter. So we don't care about the size or whatever. Then what we'd say is, if it's not a number, say that it's not valid. Otherwise, say that it's okay. So now, if I put in, and I submit, oh, that's right, it's not, when I do this, it does not let me, save. So let me grab all this and I'll just save it where I was just working. All right, I'm just going to call this forms.html. Okay, and I'm going to run it. And again, well, what was wrong there? Wow. My function not defined, etc., etc. So I think I only copied some of the stuff over. So how's that? We only got, well, we did copy over all of it. So there's my function. Well, it's there. All right, so we do have all of it. Please input any number. All right, and on click call my function. All right. X is that number that you put in there to num. So that was the input. If it's not a number, well, that was all based off of that. I was missing a parenthesis. So let's try it now. So if I put nothing in, it says input OK, which it should not be doing. If it's not a number, the text should have been input not valid. if it is not a number, x, or x equal the empty string. Let's see if it takes that then. Input not valid. Okay. If I put in any number now, it doesn't matter what the number is. Now, input is okay. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. Some of the validation, remember, you can do without any JavaScript. So in other words, by putting in required, if you leave that off, there's actually, I believe, JavaScript that's written behind the scenes that is checking to see whether or not there's a value there. Validation can be defined by many methods and be deployed in many ways. Now, typically, you do both of these. Typically, you do client-side validation first, then you do server-side validation. In fact, quite often, you're going to do client-side validation, and then you're going to go in on the server, you're going to do the exact same validation. Now, that might sound a little quirky, and you might think, well, why would I do that? Well, two reasons. One, on the client side, it is possible for a user to turn JavaScript off. So then no client-side validation is being done. Secondly, sometimes you can kind of spoof or trick the browser into thinking that something is valid when indeed it's not. All right, so again, HTML5 introduced some new types of validations. We've talked about some of these. Max and min for number elements. Patterns for regular expression patterns required, we just mentioned. These are some of the pseudo selectors. All right. I think it's about enough for that one. Let's look over here. So notice validation DOM methods. There's two of them here. Check validity, which returns true if an input element contains all valid data, false if it does not, and set custom validity, which sets the validation message property of an input element. So let's look at what's in here. All right. We're going to have a number field that goes from 100 to 300 and a button that says OK, and a paragraph here. Okay? If the validity check is false, well, let's just see what's going to happen here. So enter a number and click OK. Please enter a number. Well, the value, and it tells you the range that it has to be in. So this paragraph here says if the value is less than 100 or greater, then an error message will be displayed. That's here. Enter a number and click OK. That's here. Setting it up with our button in our interface. That's there. It does that. All right. So what we're saying is if it's false, we're letting the validation message, I believe, from JavaScript come in there. All right. So again, if we put in nothing, we get back a message that says, please fill out the field. If we put something that's invalid in, so we can only put numbers in here, but we can put numbers in that are out of range, then we get that message. Okay. Constraint validation DOM properties. Validity contains Boolean properties related to the validity of the input element. Validation message contains the message the browser displays. We just kind of saw that. And will validate indicates if an element will indeed be validated. So these validity properties, notice what we have here. Custom error, set to true if a custom validity message is set. What's nice about that is you, as the programmer, can decide what message you want to have happen as opposed to a generic type of message that JavaScript will give. And see some of the rest of them. If you've got a pattern that doesn't match, Range overflow, so if you enter something greater than what you were expecting, underflow less than what you were expecting. Step mismatch, so if you say you want to go up by hundreds and you end up putting 1,000 in there. Too long, if you exceed the max length attribute. Type mismatch, if the value is invalid for its type. Value missing if there's no value, and valid if it's true. So here's some examples. So let's just take a look at this example here. It says enter a number. If a number is greater than 100, which is the maximum, an error message will be displayed. So 100, input OK. 101, value too large. So that's the value that's too large if it's out of range. That's the value if it's within range. What if we put in a big negative number? Input's OK. So we could have checked, all right? So we could have put a min in here. Min equal 0, for example. Okay? Oops. So let's put that in there. In fact, we'll do it like we've been doing it. So we'll put that in there. And I'll run that in here. It's going to look the same, except now it'll also work for a minimum value. Okay, so if I put in here, notice there's 0 and I can't go lower. So I actually shouldn't be able to put in a negative. I can. Negative 444. Set input OK. That's a problem. That should say input OK. Minus 123. It still says the input's OK. So either it didn't take my change or something else is wrong. It did not like this min that was put in here. Min equals 0. I think that what that min is, that just shows the smallest value that it typically will take. All right? Well, so I'll tell you what, let's do this. So let me hit enter here. All right, I'm going to pretty this up just a tad. Make it easier, at least for me to read. I guess I'm that way, but I believe that all this stuff should be lined up. It makes it much easier, at least for me, to see what's going on, to understand what's going on. You may or may not agree with that. All right? And either way, it's fine. All right, 2 more changes. Now, first thing I want to change is I'm going to grab all this code and I'm going to put an else if in here. So else, if it's, I think it was underflow. Oh, well, let's double check. It wasn't under overflow. That doesn't make any sense. Range underflow is what it's called. Range underflow. All right. So now, if we put in a value that's less than 0, we should get value too small. We didn't get it before because we were checking for overflow, but we didn't check for underflow. Value too small. Value too large. Value or input OK. Notice, since it's a number field, we can't type in anything that's non-numeric, which is a good thing. All right, so I just gave you that range overflow and that range underflow. All righty, that's enough of those. Let's look here. This is from Java tpoint.com on form validation. It is important to validate the form submitted by the user because it can have inappropriate values, so validation is a must. Sure it is. Okay, so they've got a real simple example here. Let's test it first. Okay, so notice there's no CSS, there's just a name, and there's just a password. All right, the name can't be null. Notice it is, so we get name can't be blank. Well, I think if I put in even numbers, password must be at least 6 characters long. So that would be a silly name. There, so there's my name. The password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And everything's cool. But if I only make it 5, I get my message. So this is real simple, okay? But what is it? If name is null, we could have also written that as double quote there. Oh, I guess they do have that. Null means that literally it's been reset to null. In fact, we could have even changed that so that, let's grab all of this. Again, this is a really simplistic, kind of convoluted, for lack of better words, almost dumb little example, but it's fine. Paste that in. Again, I'm not going to pretty it up, but I would also probably check in here, or name equal undefined. All right, so why would I do that? Remember, undefined means that it's been declared, but it hasn't been set, so it hasn't been initialized. That way I could check, and if somebody declared the variable but never set a value to the variable, that would catch it. Again, you look at what I'm doing here. I'm not making this program run any better. I'm not, and I don't claim. I would be silly to claim that I was. But I like to do this. Again, I've been told I'm a little bit anal about this kind of stuff, but I like stuff to line up as well as it can. And I like it where it makes sense to people who look at it. All right, to me, this is much easier to take and read this and figure out what's going on than what was in here previously. Now notice there's an if and there's an else if, but that else if does not even have in it. It does not even have in it an ending else. All right? Because if neither of these two conditions are met, everything's cool. So you don't have to do anything. Again, I like to. So what did that take me? A minute? But it's so much more readable. So again, we're saying here, if the name is null, meaning it had been set to null, or it's the empty string, or it's undefined, we'll give an alert that says it can't be blank and just return false, meaning we're done. Otherwise, if the password is length is less than 6, we give them an alert that says it must be at least 6, and we return false. But if it's neither one of those, everything's cool. So there's not a problem. And like I said, maybe I just go a little too nuts over this, but to me that makes it so much easier to read and understand. All right, so there's that example. I'm going to go over that later, not in this section. But this is from W3 resource. Now this is a much more extensive example. All right, hopefully you heard what I just said, and that is this is a much more extensive example. Look at all that's in here. User ID required, it must be 5 to 12 characters. Password required, 7 to 12 characters. Name required, alphabet only. Address optional. Country required, must select a country. Zip code required, must be numeric only, so it won't take the dash. Email required, must be a valid email. Sex is required, so you must have either male or female chosen. Language is required, either English or non-English. So it says, how would we set those things? Well, again, we've got a really ugly looking interface right here. some CSS. Well, let me highlight all this. Yes, it will. Copy. Yeah, this is way too ugly. I'm not going to do a bit of trying to fix that up. All right. So next we come in and we look at our CSS. So that becomes style.css. We'll replace it. No, we'll call it style2.css. All right, so here I will need to, my link, rel equals style sheet href equals, I don't have that, so mine is style2.css. All right, and the source will just be, we'll call it form val.cs or .js. All right, and I'll have to put that in just a minute. So that's the code in here. So we're going to have quite a few functions in here. Okay, so we validated the user ID. Here's the password. Oops. Well, you can see there's username, user address, so each one of them has got their own routine. This would just take too long. You can go nutso with this stuff. It's really and truly not hard to do. So I'm going to make this script2.js. Of course, I've already got it. I'll replace it. That's fine. So let's see how they made this look. Oh, that's not bad at all. That's not a bad looking form. All right, but the only thing I think that we put in code for was the user ID. Okay, and it looks like it tried sending it anyway. I'm just going to skip that one. There are a lot of really good examples out there of forms. You know, just go in there and, you know, JavaScript form validation PDF. All right. And here's from Tutorials Point, which has always got good stuff in it. All right. So if we look in here, this isn't too long. I think we can take this. Copy it. Come back in here. Paste that in. Let's see what that form looks like. Okay. Pretty simplistic, but you get the idea. All right, then we'll come into our script. Forget about the style2 and get into our script2 there. Delete that. And here will be our basic form validation. There's some of it. And here's some more of it. Again, I don't want to sound like a big complainer here, but I just do want you to know that I had a lot of really good stuff that I had on my flash drive that unfortunately got ruined. So I'm not going to put that there. Instead, I'm going to say source equal script2.js. All right, let's try it. File is not found. Well, let's just forget it. How about the email? What if I put it in? Okay, well, something's host. Again, what I'm trying to show you, and not very well, but what I'm trying to show you is that there are a multitude of resources out there. All right, some are better than others. I'm kind of showing you that right now. Okay, by and large, most of them are pretty good. There's a pretty good one out on TyZag.com, except it's a little hard to read. So if you go to the JavaScript tutorial and you go down to somewhere in here, functions maybe, I don't remember. How about this? TyZag JavaScript form validation. I know it's in here because I've used this one before. All right. So it's pretty well done. Notice if the element length is 0, so here's a required field. There's nothing in there, so it says please enter a value. Checking for numeric only. We've already talked about that. So numbers only. So if I put in something non-numeric, numbers only please. Checking for alpha only. And if I put in something that's not alpha, letters only please. Restricting length, so 6 to 8 characters. Again, 6 to 8 characters. If I make it too big, again, 6 to 8 characters. All right, you'll notice here, I can choose a state. No problem. But if I come back and it says please choose, I can tell I haven't chosen anything yet. So we're checking there, and if 0 is the one that's highlighted, you know, because that's choice 0, choice 1, choice 2, and choice 3. All right. There's email validation. This is very complete. Okay. What they do at the end is they grab everything that's in here. Okay. Everything. And they put a whole bunch of stuff in here, and then they check all of it to make sure that indeed it all works. Let's try this. I'm probably knowing my luck right now it won't work, but we'll try it anyway. All right, we're going to come up to here, and under our body, I'm going to get rid of everything till the end of the body. Oops, so my beginning body tag. Okay, then I'll come back into here, and I'm going to grab all of this, which is the form. It probably will be very, very ugly because it looks like there's no CSS in there. Let's save. All right. Usually when that happens like that, there's something goofed up. But I can guarantee you that if you take the time to go back in and look at this example, not this one, not that one, but if you go out to right here, TyZag.com, JavaScript T, JavaScript form.php, there's a whole section in there on form validation, and it is very well done. All right, so last thing I would tell you is, I guess if you still weren't happy about it, okay, you could always go out to youtube.com And under YouTube, you could go in and you could check JavaScript form validation. There we go. And as always, some of these will be better than others. All right. If you've got one in here, I don't see any that are that small. But if you get one that's in here that's 2 or 3 minutes long, it's probably not going to be long enough that it's going to help you very much. Here's one that's 9 months old, so it's not old. 221 likes and 18 dislikes. Would probably be a great place to start. July 5th, 2016, so it's not even a year old. But there's other ones. You notice that some of these are really long. This one's 3 years old.
Hi. Let's look at the second.
So again, some of these will be better than others. Okay, I'm just going to leave it right there, and when I come back in just a minute, I'm going to start going over Chapter 7, which is on Object-Oriented JavaScript. Be back with that shortly.